Okay, there we go. Um, Also, just need to mention that we do have a fairly lengthy Q&A window open a bit later on. So that's question and answers. So do hold on to your questions until then, um, uh, in the first part of the session, and we will address those questions during that particular slot. If you need any support during the session, let one of the facilitators know in the chat. And also, can I kindly ask you just to keep muted during the presentation and while other residents are speaking during the Q&A as well. If you need BSO interpretation, Irene is here. So use the add pin on your Zoom to have Irene as part of your main screen. And depending on the numbers that are attending, if you could please raise your hands for questions, because obviously if everyone starts talking, then no one's going to understand each other. So raise your hand using the Zoom um, a tool, and then we can come to each person in order. We may have to limit the number of questions per individual because just so that we can give everyone a chance. And I think there was around up to 70 people booked on this. So people are still coming in, I see, as well as we speak. Next slide, please. So the reason we're here is, first of all, just to give you an oversight of what People Power Places is. And secondly, is to support you to apply for a grant of up to £5,000. And most importantly, is what you do with that £5,000, which is hopefully to make a difference in Newham. Okay, and here is the schedule for this evening. So we've just done the welcome housekeeping. I'm just going to move on to what is People Power Places. We'll be talking about the priorities as well. Some of you may not know what these are and what they're about. So we'll go through that and some of the details of the application process. We'll have your questions around 6:45. We'll actually run through the application form as well. So we'll put that up on the screen and we'll go over it step by step, go through it step by step. So we do want to get to that bit. I remember on the last session, it kind of had to rush through that. So it is useful for people to actually see the application form and sort of see what the questions are and or, how we can answer those questions. So try to get that get to there for about 7:05, and then we'll tell you what the next steps are and how to apply. And I hope to finish at 7:30. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So what is People Power Places? So People Power Places, some of you may remember community assemblies from last year and year before. So that this is the new name now, People Power Places. And it gives Newham residents the chance to make a positive change together in the local area. We are one of the largest participatory budgeting program in the country. And some of you may know there's 8 neighbourhoods that make up Newham. We'll go through that a little bit later on. Each neighbourhood has been allocated £200,000 funding to spend on local projects done by local people in the next 2 years. Um, so yeah, just to emphasise that £200,000 will be spent by local organisations and local residents, um, and this is what we're offering. So this is for anyone who lives, works, or learns in the community neighbourhood that can apply for these grants. So where does this money come from? So this isn't from the central pot where called the council tax goes into, but this is from a particular funding stream called Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy, which is short for NCIL. NCIL is what developers pay the council when they put up these big buildings, big block of flats. So they've got a duty of care to put some money towards local community infrastructure. But with this funding, there are some criteria that come along with it. So that's we need to sort of make sure we fulfill these criteria, and some of these will be things like development and growth of the area. So these projects need to also improve public spaces and infrastructure, and also the health and happiness of the local community. So those are the kind of criteria that NSIL funding comes along with. Next slide, please. Uh, this is just a step guide of the process. So in May, there were People Power Places events at all of the 8 neighbourhoods, and all residents came together at each of those neighbourhoods and decided what the important things are to them, and decided on their top 3 priorities. We'll go through that in a bit. Um, we are now actually coming to almost a close to the solution events, which the last one will be on Monday at the Green Street Community Neighbourhood, taking place at Catherine Road Community Centre. Um, so we'll be coming to a close, but alongside that, we're at step 3 where the actual applications are open as well. So the application opened in on the 20th of June and it closed on the 3rd of September. So during that time, you can put in applications for, and residents can apply for up to £5,000, and local organisations, one community faith sector organisation, can apply for up to £20,000. And then step 4 comes into play where residents vote for their favourite projects. And then step 5 is the delivery of those projects. So those residents and organisations will deliver what they promised in their project plan using the NSIL funding. And then step 6, we celebrate our achievements. If we move on to the next slide, it will show you sort of a graphic view of what I've just mentioned. So like I said, we're in sort of step 2, step 3 section at the top where it says we are here. Applications are open up until the 3rd of September. We're going to be opening up vote in October for residents to vote on their favourite projects. Just to mention as well, between the 3rd of September and October, there is a period where uh, each neighbourhood have working groups which are consisted of local residents, council officers and councillors, and they will be shortlisting these applications to make sure that they meet some of these SIL criteria, that they make sure that they meet the priorities that the residents have put in place in last May. So that process will take place, and then those who make it through will go through to the voting stage in October. November, we're looking to announce the successful projects with a view to start delivery in January 2024, and that will give the projects and the project leads a full year up until the end of December 2024 to deliver the projects. So just to bear that in mind when you're sort of submitting your application form, sort of this will be your window of delivery for the project. And then towards the end of sort of between January and March, we'll event we did, and then celebrate between May and June. Next slide, please. Um, this is a map of Newham and its neighbourhoods and wards. So the black outline indicates where the borders are for each individual community neighbourhood boundary, and then the blue outline shows where the ward boundaries are. So some neighbourhoods have 3. Well, most neighbourhoods have 3 wards within them. So this is quite important when you submit your application form, because you would put in your application form based on the area that you're living in. If you're not sure about your the exact neighborhood that you are in, do let us know. Put it in the chat. We can find out for you if you give us your post. Don't put your postcode in the chat. We'll just give us your name and we'll contact you, and we'll let you know which neighborhood you're in. Because your application form needs to be submitted to that particular neighbourhood team. Next slide, please. So who can apply? Anyone who lives, works or learns in the community neighbourhood can apply. There's no prior experience or knowledge needed. So this is what I want to stress to everyone is don't panic too much. It might seem like a kind of lengthy, complicated process to you, like because at this stage you're just literally thinking of ideas and putting in an application form. Don't be put off, because we'll be here to support you all the way through. So what we need from you now is your idea put on paper. And this is why we're kind of doing these clinics, so that it gives you sort of a bit of help on how to fill out these application forms. And the thing is, we'll go through some tips later on, but we want to see those forms as early as possible as well. So please, that you can't apply if you are part of a working group in Newham as well. So like I mentioned before, each neighbourhood has its own working group. You can't apply for a project if you're part of any working group in Newham. The deadline, like I mentioned, is the 3rd of September, and we encourage all residents, new and those who've done projects before, to apply and bring fresh project ideas to the table. Next slide, please.
Hey.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm just going to talk you through some of the parties that have been chosen by residents. So we've kind of taken 6 party themes, sorry, from the 8 parties that were part of the Newham building a fair Newham strategy. So these are the 6 themes. So you can see there's health and well-being, community safety, inclusive economy, youth empowerment, community development and participation, and environment and public spaces. So these are the 6 themes that were put forward for residents to discuss, deliberate at May events called Our Priorities. So each community neighbourhood discussed those priorities together, and then they voted for their favourite priorities. And each of the community neighbourhood has come up with 3 local priorities. These are really important because this is what residents want you to focus on when you put a project application in. So when you put a project application in, you're going to be able to see which 3 priorities have been chosen by residents in your local area, and your project must meet at least one of the local priorities. So these are the 3 priorities that have been chosen by each of the community neighbourhoods. So Beckton and Royal Docks is community development and participation, health and wellbeing, environment and public spaces. Custom House in Cannington is health and wellbeing, inclusive economy and youth empowerment. East Ham is health and wellbeing, youth empowerment, community development and participation. Forest Gate in Maryland is health and wellbeing, community development and participation, and community safety. Green Street has chosen health and wellbeing, community safety, and youth empowerment. Manor Park has chosen health and wellbeing, youth empowerment, and environment and public spaces. Plaistow is health and wellbeing, community safety, and environment and public spaces. And finally, Stratford and West Ham is the same as Plaistow, so health and wellbeing, community safety, and environment and public spaces. So we just want to give you a bit of, a bit of inspiration on what projects you could kind of like think of when you think about health and well-being. So health and well-being, as you've just seen, has been chosen by all 8 community neighbourhoods. So if you want to have a project that addresses this issue, you can apply for any community neighbourhood areas. Some really interesting projects that have happened previously was Mealy Social Club, for example, which was run by a resident. Activities for young adults and young people with learning disabilities to improve with their social skills and build friendships. We also had one from Generation East London, which was around BSL storytelling and self-defense classes. And then some general kind of like ideas that you could get inspired from. So for example, Good Gym is a kind of good example of like doing kind of health and exercise and mixing it with being helpful for the community. Or befriending is a kind of like a program that a lot of that happens all over the world and could be a good idea to improve or reduce loneliness as well. So inclusive economy, so this has been chosen only in Custom House in Canning Town. So if you want to put a project forward on inclusive economy, just make sure that you apply in Custom House in Canning Town. So just some examples, whoops. Sorry, wrong slides. There we go. So some interesting projects that have come forward in terms of inclusive economy was Manor Park Pop-up Market, for example. So this was really a great one in Manor Park, where lots of local residents were invited to shop locally. So they kind of funded the market with local traders to support local businesses. We also had the like Make, Do and Mend, which is twice weekly workshop, helping residents and students to mend, alter and upcycle their clothes. And the community wardrobe as well was supporting residents to access clothing, secondhand clothing for cheaper as well, so supporting with the cost of living crisis as well. Okay, this is definitely not working, the slides. So youth empowerment is another one which has been chosen by quite a few neighborhoods. So you've got some really great examples from previous cycles as well. So for example, we had young people who started a football club. We had also a sort of creative youth theatre, Voices Through the Wind, that did like creative writing. And then we also had like multi-game area at the end, at the back of Beckton Globe Youth Zone as well, that was funded by the People Power Places program. And you've also got like lots of different ideas for children and young people, whether it's like play streets in your area or youth theatres or arts and skills development projects, for example, like this one in Islington. Community safety, so this also has been chosen by 4 different community neighborhood areas. So we've had some really inspiring projects in previous years as well. So for example, What's the Point was one where it was like classes in schools. There was and testimonies from to reduce knife crimes for young people. We also had Safer Streets, which was the first kind of plaster neighborhood watch, which was started by the community, funded through People Power Places as well. And we also had a drug reduction program, which was specifically for families from ethnic minorities impacted by the use of drugs. So really inspiring projects funded before. And then just generally also some examples. So for example, Walking Bus is a good example of like small community projects to keep children safe when they go to school. Hate Crime Community Ambassadors is another kind of program that could be inspiring in terms of reducing hate crime in Newham as well. Environment and public spaces. So this has also been chosen as a local priority in 4 different community neighborhood areas. We've had a lot of environment and public spaces projects in previous years. So for example, Welcome to Channel Sea is one that happened in Stratford. We've got signposts and trails for playgrounds as well, which was using kind of paintings and colourful signposts to signpost areas for children to play. And then Planet Youth was a sort of upcycling, encouraging to upcycle through workshops as well. And then just some different examples as well on how to activate parks in Newham that could be inspiring as well. For example, we've got the musical play equipment that could be installed in one of the parks in Newham. Community development and participation. So again, this has been chosen in some of the neighbourhoods. We've had a lot of community development and participation projects happen as well. One of them actually, Dean in the room has been running this one, the community events at the Custom House Bookshop. But we also have Beckton community projects, so lots of community events, including exercise classes, women's yoga, or collaborative theatre projects with Willow as well, and then some general inspiration. So for example, Library of Things is a good model in terms of sharing resources that could be funded. Community Fridge to reduce food waste and share food with other residents. And then the Big Lunch is also a good example of a sort of like something that can bring the community together. Okay, so moving on to the practical details of how to apply for funding if you're a resident. So the projects that are going to be funded by People Power Places are expected to be delivered within 1 year. So the 1 year is from January 2024 to the 31st of December 2024. The projects need to address at least one of the priorities that we've just mentioned. So one of the 6 priorities in total across the borough, and one of the 3 top local priorities for your community neighborhood area that you're applying for. So you can find the details of the priorities and some facts as well about those priorities in the project application directly. So you can have a sort of like blurb about the priority, and you can also see which of the 3 different local priorities have been chosen per neighborhood. So just make sure that you kind of look at this page before you fill out your application form. Projects will, so you can't apply for more than 1 project across the 2023-2025 cycle. That means that if you apply for a project in East Ham, so for example, if you live in East Ham, but you also work in Stratford, you can only apply for 1. So just make sure that if you, for example, if you learn in Newham and you work in Stratford, just make sure that you kind of check the priorities and check where you would like to deliver your projects. You can only apply once. Projects will also need to be entirely new. So if you have applied for funding before and you receive funding through Community Assemblies Programme or People Power Places, just make sure that your project is different. This is just to make sure that we continue to fund different projects for the community, and we continue to encourage also the different people to come forward to be funded by the programme. And then a really important one as well is that residence projects are voluntary. So you've got up to £5,000. If you do need some specific kind of to hire some specific specialist skills, for example, if you're running a training and you need to bring in someone like a freelancer, for example, just make sure that those salary expenses is really important that they're part of your budget. So you've got a budget section in a project application where you can fill out your project costs. So if you do require a salary or staff expenses for whatever reason, just make sure that you put it in there, but it can't be a salary for just a person running the project. And all the salary expenses must follow, obviously, the employment rules. This is really important. So you need to have a contract if it's a freelancer, and it can't be a volunteer that you pay out of the grant. So if you volunteer, you can't be paid out of the grant. And the community neighborhood teams is also here to support you if you have any questions with that. And they might also ask you to provide some attached documents just to kind of check that you follow the employment rules if you are using some of the grant to pay some salaries. Okay, so another important one is that if your project is in a public space, so for example, if it's set in a park or if it's set in a street, you will need to do a consultation. So this is just to make sure that people in your area are aware of your project and that they agree with it. This is kind of, it can become a problem if you don't do a consultation. For example, if you want to do a play street and you want to close the street for cars, for example, you need to make sure that your neighbors agree for you to close the road. This is really important for any projects that happen in public space, and this is something that Newham Council we have to follow as well. If you don't know how to do a consultation, just join the support clinic. So it'll be a similar format as today on how to do a consultation, and we can support you to know what to do. So there's different ways of doing it. You can do it with surveys, door knocking, questions, etc. So you just need to make sure that you have put in your application form how many people you've spoken to in terms of doing that consultation process. To make sure you don't negatively impact any of your neighbours with your project. If you're unsure on how to cost your project, we also have created a cost catalogue document. So this is also to help with any project that is set in the public space. So if it's in a park or if it's on the street in Newham, we can support you to know, for example, if you want to plant a tree somewhere, if you want to add a planter, how much would a tree cost? How much would a planter cost? This is just to make sure that your project is realistic. So for example, as a resident, you would apply for up to £5,000. But some of the expenses that are related to planting a tree, for example, can be much more than you might think. So just make sure that you check the cost catalogue before you apply, before you fill out your project application. And if you're unsure, again, you can join the support clinic. That will be on the Thursday, 20th of July at 6 p.m. Similar format again, where we'll go through how to cost your projects. So we'll talk about projects that could be set in the public space, but also any kind of project. So how to kind of figure out how much you would put for each of the different items in your project costs. If you are unsure, if you've got a great idea, but you're not sure about the budget, then definitely come to that clinic. We've got only one Our Solutions event left on Monday at Green Street, but if you want to have a bit of support as well, this is also a great time to come along and get support from experts from different council services as well. So for some of the projects that you might want to do, if it's in a location where you might need some permission, so for example, if you do something in the street, so if you want, I don't know, for example, a bike hanger in one of the streets, then you will need a permission. So in that case, you need to really make sure that you do put the project location in your project application form. We can support you to kind of check if you will need a permission, but you just need to let us know. And then obviously permissions can take some time. So you just need to be aware of that when you start your project in January 2024, that it might take some time for you to get the permission. And obviously, if you do require permission, that is also kind of a risk factor for in terms of if you don't get the permission, then the project might not go ahead. So this is just something for you to be aware of. Any projects that has to do with children and young people, you will also need some safeguarding policies and DBS checks. So this is just to make sure, obviously, that we safeguard like Newham children and young people, and no one is at risk because of a project that's funded by People Power Places. Again, this is something that if your project applications is accepted and it's successful after the voting stage, we will organize another support clinic to support you if you don't know how to do a safeguarding policy or if you don't know how to do a DBS check. So yeah, please just ensure that you have that in mind if you apply for a project that involves children, young people, and also vulnerable adults. A really important part of the project applications as well is the conditions of the grant. So you just need to make sure that before you sign up for doing a project, you're kind of aware of the implications of that. It's a really great opportunity to get funding, but obviously we kind of expect residents to run the project. So if you're unsure, just check the conditions of the grant, and if anything is unclear, just get in touch with your community neighbourhood teams as well. There is also a frequently asked questions document on Newham Co-Create that will link up in the chat as well. So if you have any kind of like questions, obviously you can ask us today, but please make sure that you also check the FAQ, because there's a lot of questions there that are already answered, and it also gives a bit of guidance on, you know, where you should fill out your application, how to kind of like deliver your projects, and all sorts of like information about how this program runs. So support clinics wise, we've got more support clinics, as I've just mentioned, how to do a consultation and how to cost your project. So just make sure that you do, if you want to apply, definitely kind of attend those support clinics as well. The voluntary community faith sector organization support clinic, as Chris mentioned, we've already done that one. So we've uploaded the recording on YouTube and on Newham Co-Create. So if you want to kind of watch the recording, just click on that link. And we will also upload the recording from this session that we're running just now, and we'll send it to you via email, as well as putting it on Newham Co-Create. So the most important bit is how to apply. So we've put the link in the chat already, but just go on Newham Co-Create. Newham Co-Create, if you're not aware, this is Newham's online participation platform. This is where all the consultation happens and all the People Power Places. You can follow the whole process of the participatory budgeting program. So go on Newham Co-Create, you will find all the documents on there. So you've got the application form, so the resident one or the voluntary community sector organization one, depending if you're a resident or an organization. If you are a resident group but you're not constituted, you will need also to apply as a resident. So just make sure that if you're a group of residents but you don't have an organization as such, make sure that you apply with the resident application form, which is the one up to £5,000. There's a specific section that we'll go through in a minute, which is for groups that are not constituted. If you want to print the application form, it's best to use the print version. So there's a link on Newham Co-Create that says print version of the application form. This is just because the boxes are larger. So if you want to actually write up with a pen and in a print version, then just make sure that you use the print version. And then if you, so how to then return your application form. So if you've put the application form online, then you need to send it by email to your community neighborhood contact details. So at the end of the application form, we'll show you that in a minute as well. You've got all the contact details, so you can return it by email. And if you are printing it and if you're doing this offline, then you can post it or bring it to your local library instead. And you can also request a print version from your local library. So if you know anyone who's not got access to online or he's digitally excluded, then just make sure to let them know that they can also put to the library to get a print version as well. So you have until Sunday, the 3rd of September to apply, but obviously, as Chris has mentioned before, we really want to have as many applications in as possible early. And the reason for that is that if there's anything that we think might not be possible or is difficult as part of your application form or anything that you might have missed, we can support you and we can get in touch with you to ask you for more information or to support you to submit your application again. So the earliest, the better. It's also really great for us to kind of see what projects are coming up as well. After the deadline, the process is the working groups. So the working groups are local residents, councillors, and councillor officers who will assess your project application according to the criteria that's linked to the funding and kind of just looking at your application to make sure that it meets the criteria. So this is just a shortlisting in terms of, is this meeting the criteria? So they're not deciding whether this is a great application or not. They're just saying, okay, does this meet the criteria? And then once we've shortlisted the applications that can meet the funding criteria, then we'll go into the voting stage. And then the voting stage will be both online and in person. And Newham residents will have a chance to vote for their favorite project. If you've been successful, then you will be expected to deliver your project. And if you are unsuccessful at the voting stage or at the shortlisting stage, we'll do our best to provide you with some feedback. And we will also have project clinics to direct you to alternative funding if you want to keep funding your projects through a different funding. Okay. So like I said earlier, we've got one more Our Solutions events where you can get support from experts as well. So we've got colleagues from other services in the council, for example, parks, community safety, who are there at the events. So you can also talk to them and ask them for tips about how to make your applications great. So definitely take this opportunity. It's on Monday. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. At Catherine Road Community Centre. So if you do want to go along, just make sure that you kind of get the Eventbrite page. You can also join online because these are always hybrid sessions. So you've got the Zoom link here as well. Okay, so that's enough talking for us for now. We're going to go into questions and answers. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And we're going to start taking questions.
Brilliant. So I see one hand goes up straight away. Is that Rizwan?
Hello.
Hi, Rizwan.
Hi, I have a quick question. So the grant's for 5,000, but if you project the cost to be more than that, would you be able to put your own money in? Obviously not in the hope that you get that back or anything, but in the overall scheme of the project, is that something you can do?
What do you mean your own money? So you're
So
intending to put your money into it as well
yeah,
as the.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's potential for.
Or does the project have to be capped at 5,000?
No. It doesn't have to be kept defined because there can be potential for working in partnership with others and also additional funding from other sources as well.
Okay.
But you need to be quite clear in your application form what the overall cost of your project is and break it down so that it's quite clear to see how much what's been spent where and why your project will be going over £5,000. And then
Okay.
once that and then this is why Emily was saying it's important to get it in early, because I sort of looking at the chat where you're speaking to Samantha. You're possibly looking at a project in East Ham, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Samantha sent you her email address. So
Yep.
if you can get this application form in early, we can have a look at it and see exactly the breakdown and try and work with you to see how we can make it
Okay.
work.
Cool.
Okay.
And if it involves a park, I guess you kind of like have to go through a process where you get permission from the park as well.
Yeah, yeah. And Samantha will advise you uh, uh, about your once she has a look at your application and sees where potentially there might be need where you might need permissions and things.
Okay.
We
Cool.
can take she can take it from there and advise you further.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Okay.
I just had a question from Desmond in the chat, so I'll just read it. So you asked if you don't have 2 years to complete your project. So just to clarify on that, so the cycle for people is 2 years, but that includes obviously all the participation elements. So we started in April with the launch event, and then there's all the sort of process to choose the priorities and then vote on the different projects, etc. So the delivery of projects is 1 year, 12 months in total. So from January 2024 to December 2024. Okay, we've got another one in the chat. Are the costs for use of the parks expensive? So that's a difficult one to answer just like that, Rosa, but I would definitely recommend to have a look at the catalogue of costs, because you have all the costs here. So it really depends on what you would like to use the parks for. If it's just to run an event, then you will just need to have a permission and insurance, but you will need to request permission to hold your event, for example. And you need to make sure that you think about having the right insurance. Again, we can support you to find out about that. So yeah, just make sure that you kind of check, because it really depends on what your project might be. And if you have a specific question on what you would like to do, then yeah, let us know.
Right. Thank you for sharing the catalogue of costs. I was going to ask this question, but it's been shared now. Thank you. I was just wondering, because if a project was involving the use of parks, let's say 4 or 5 times a year, I was wondering whether it would eat up the £5,000 quickly or not. I have no idea. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, definitely. So if your idea is just to use the parks for, I don't know, an event or an outdoor cinema or whatever, then the cost will just be related to the insurance and the permissions, and it's all in the catalogue of costs. So if you have a look at that, and then yeah, I would also recommend to kind of come to the how to cost your project clinic as well, because we'll go into a bit more detail on all those project costs as well.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Got Susie coming up next.
Hello, Emily. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm just wondering, how do you administer the fund? Is it that we submit receipts to you, or you expect us to have a bank account? I'm not sure how that process works, please.
Yeah, so that's a really great question, Susie. Thanks for that, because I think yeah, everyone will benefit from that answer. So if you're a resident and you don't have a bank account, treasurer's bank account, because you're not an organization, then we have an organization, Newham Council, that we commission to be your bank account. Basically, they're called Compost London. And the only thing to know about Compost is that so they will be basically doing the bank runs for you. So there's different ways of doing it. Either you kind of advance the cost, so you pay for things, you send them the receipts, and then they reimburse you, or you can send them invoices of what you want to pay for, and they can do the orders for you. So you can send them, like, for example, an Amazon link, and they do the order for you instead. So that's how it works in terms of them doing the bank. It does come with a cost. So compost, if you choose to go through compost for your bank account, treasurer's bank account, they take 2.5% out of your grant. So for example, for £5,000 resident if you apply for £5,000, that will be, you would receive how much is it? 4,825, is that correct? No.
Yeah, I think it's about around 150, £125, I think.
Yeah.
Monthly charge out of £5,000. Yeah. So it is mentioned at the beginning of the application form, and it gives you the description of what that amount looks like. So do factor that into your project budgeting section on the application form as well, if that's your chosen method.
Yeah, and just to complete on that as well. So if you didn't want to pay to kind of like have the 2.5% fee, for example, so the alternative would be to have another organization doing the bank for you. So if that's your case, then just make sure that you also say that in your application form. So there's a section in the application form we'll just run through in a moment, and we'll kind of tell you where you need to say that.
I'm really sorry. I just need to quickly charge my laptop, if that's okay, because the battery's going down. Can I just take 2 minutes?
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'll be back in 2.
Yeah. Oh, we've got CG here as well. Any more questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, if you submit your application form in and clearly you've made a mistake, or through lack of experience, a bit of support would have improved the application. Do you get a second chance to go at it with some guidance, or you've submitted it and that's it?
No, this is why we kept emphasizing it's so beneficial to get it in early before the deadline. So, for example, if you can get it in sort of towards the end of this month, really early August, it will give that particular neighbourhood that you're applying to an opportunity to look over it and come back to you with any sort of further questions or ways that you can enhance your application to give it a better chance to go through to the voting stage. So that's our biggest tip there. Won't be a second chance after the 3rd of September.
Yeah,
we are here to support you. So if you,
Yeah.
like you were saying, if you do submit your application form and you feel like maybe there is something you want to change, or maybe there was something you want to add, you are more than welcome to contact the senior officer for that specific neighbourhood and get in touch with them and just say, I would like to revise my application, is that possible? Or even just sit down and overlook and just get some feedback. We can't fill in the application for you, but we can give you feedback.
Thank you. And for each area, the priorities or the areas that you defined. So, for example, in the West Ham area, I think you defined health and well-being, community safety, and environment and public safety. Are they in order of your preferences in terms of choice, or do they all have the same value?
so they are in order of what residents have chosen. So they are in order of the number of votes that have come through for this particular priority. So, for example, you will see that health and well-being was the top priority for 7 out of 8 of the community neighbourhood areas. But that doesn't have to do with how we score the application. So we're not going to score the application better if it addresses health and well-being. Not at all. The only criteria is that it needs to meet at least one of the priorities.
So, okay. And so if you've got, say, I don't know, Beckton, for example, Royal Docks, I don't know what else is here, but can they go away with 5 projects and another area gets nothing, or is it evenly spread?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so say, for example, Stratford put in for 5 individual projects from which you're going to choose, and then another area in Newham, and I'm thinking Royal Dock sticks in my head, they put in for 5. Can it be a situation where Royal Docks will get all of theirs approved at the expense of Stratford getting nothing?
No.
Or okay, so are you going to try and
No.
project across?
Yeah, so the funds are specific to each neighbourhood. So every neighbourhood will be allocated £200,000, and that pot will remain within that neighbourhood.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just to add on that we have got extra funding from the Royal Docks team, which is £80,000 just for the community neighbourhood areas of Custom House and Canning Town and Beckton and Royal Docks. So yeah, there's a little bit of extra funding there, which is specifically for those areas because of the partnership we have with the Royal Docks team to support more projects through People Power Places.
So Rosa, next, I think.
We also have Sonia who wanted to ask a question.
Okay.
Is it good to ask mine, or is there
Yeah,
someone else?
go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
You were saying earlier about the budgets. So, for instance, if I was applying for 5,000 and some of that was equipment and materials, but part of it was for workshops, could you pay the facilitators of those workshops, as you said, freelance people, and could that also include me to run some of the workshops, even though I'd be leading the project?
So if you're going to be paying yourself as a facilitator of the training, again, this needs to be really clear around like the freelance contract and how that's going to work. So you wouldn't be able to pay yourself to kind of like run the entire project, or all the admin that might come with it, for example, especially because you're not an organization but just a resident applying. So you wouldn't be able to do that. If you do want to kind of like be one of the facilitators of a specialist trainings skill, then in that case, yeah, you just need to make sure that that you have the right kind of processes and contracts in place to do that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, John.
Yes, hello. You might have covered it. I came in a bit late, so it might have been covered. But anyway, the question is, I know in previous projects, years gone by, the people putting their project forward have always made a little video, and then this video gets shown at various events for people to know what they're potentially going to vote for. Will that be in this case? Will there be little videos we've got to make? And can you just make the video on your own little phone and upload that somewhere so it gets viewed?
Yeah. Yeah, you can do. So previously when you submit your application form, we would like you to go on Newham Co-Create and submit that idea on People Power Places, and within that tile, when you do create that tile, please name the tile the exact same name as your project name on your application form, so that we can match it as well. So and these are the ideas that will go on Newham Co-Create, and people have previously attached videos onto those, so you can go in there and look at project submission either by text, or some people have attached other files as well on there, like videos as well.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
I guess the other thing to know as well is that we will be organizing in-person events where we will be encouraging people who apply for funding to also explain their projects to residents, so they have a bit of knowledge as well what they can vote for. Yeah, so if you apply for a project application, just make sure also that you remember to upload on Newham Co-Create your idea as well.
And when it comes to showcasing your project, pitching your idea to the public, we do encourage you to be as creative as possible. We really would like to see what the neighbourhood can create. So we really love projects that, you know, challenge the norm and make it exciting as well.
Thanks.
I think we've got Rosa.
Yeah, Jose. Hi,
Yeah.
hi again. Thank you. I've got two questions. One of them is there a minimum amount of votes that's required to pass to the next stage? Or is it just the projects that have got the most votes that go through? How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So you've got a couple of stages after submitting your application form. So once you submit your application form, once the deadline has reached on the 3rd of September, there will be an assessment of your application form by the working group, and also if necessary, some a department within the council as well. So, but they'll be looking at your application form. They would be looking at the feasibility of application form, and also scoring it against all the criteria that we've mentioned, like the local priorities and the NCIL criteria. This is all sort of mentioned in the application form. So this is why it's really important that you read that top part of the application form, because it explains to you what those local priorities are. So that's the initial stage. Your application form will be marked, and there is a pass mark. There will be a pass mark that will be then put in place. And if you score above that, that's the stage that you're then put to the voting stage. So this is where your application, your idea then is then put to the public, to all your neighbours and residents to see what they would like to see in their local area. So they will vote on their favourite project. And this is the part that will give you a chance to really campaign and sort of promote your idea to your neighbours, to your neighbourhood, and try to gain as many votes as possible, basically.
Yeah, that's the stage that I meant. Is there a minimum amount of votes that you need for the winners?
No.
It's
Not
the most
minimum
voted.
amount. Yes, it'll be ranked. So there will be we will look at the highest number of votes, and obviously because there is a budget associated with each neighbourhood, we will be looking at the all top voted projects that will make up to the sum of that budget. So for example, if it's £200,000, all the top voted projects will be added up, and whatever can fit will be taken forward as successful. If you understand what I mean. I mean, I could.
No, I don't actually. I don't
No,
understand.
okay, that's fine.
I'll
That's
come
fine.
in if you want.
Yeah.
So we will take the top most voted projects to be funded, but obviously we have £200,000 per neighbourhood. So if the last project is £20,000, and that means that it goes over the budget, then we might ask this project to whether they kind of want to rebudget it, or we might fund another project instead. So it's just the question of like.
Okay, that ties with my second question, which was the use of this 80,000 extra from the Royal Docks.
Yeah.
How is that? Is that at a point like that you can make use of this money, or is it like, for example, for the projects? Let's say I put a project, I request £5,000, but then I realized that I could do a cooperation or a collaboration with the Royal Docks, and with an extra 10,000 from the Royal Docks, I could do XYZ extra.
So the Royal Docks funding is part of the same process. So you can
Right.
only apply for up to £5,000 as a resident.
Right. Okay. So any collaboration would have to be included within this £5,000.
Exactly. So if you want to have match funding from another funder, it has to be a completely different funder entirely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Got about 3 minutes left, so we can probably take one or
I think
two.
we had Desmond left. Next.
Okay, I've just unmuted myself. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Because I've got certain disabilities, I'm really worried about accessibility. at the moment, for me to put something in your chat, I have to use my assistive technology, which I talk into it and it reads things to me. But what it does, it cuts off your audio. So every time I put a question in, I miss out what you're saying. So I miss out vital information. Your facilitator said, oh, we can talk afterwards to see what we can do about it. But there's also a thing with the deaf and hard and disabled people. How are we hearing, or how can we have a voiceover of the questions they're saying to the interpreter?
So you mean the project in the application form, or?
Well, obviously, because you've got an interpreter here, you've got deaf
Right.
and
Yeah,
hard
yeah.
of hearing people. So they must be asking her questions or not. So we can't hear.
So if they want to ask their question, they can pop it in the chat, and then we'll read it out, and Irina will interpret it.
Yeah, or they can put their hand up, and Irina can relay the translation from the BSL.
Okay, because I haven't seen anything from any deaf or hard of hearing people.
Okay.
Have we got any deaf and hard of hearing people on?
We've asked if there's anyone on. No one's put their hand up, so it doesn't look like there's anyone.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, that's a shame. I wonder why. Why do you think that is?
I've no idea. We had them for the last clinic, so.
Sorry, some people do attend. They did attend the last clinic we had, which was for VCFS. So they may be going underneath the application of the voluntary community faith sector. Some people may not be able to attend. We do record the clinics and we upload, so they are able to look at it at a different time. But we do work with residents who are from the deaf and hard of hearing community. Our BSL interpreter, she actually did a project last cycle. She delivered a project for BSL families via storytelling, deaf awareness, and also self-defense for women hearing and hard of hearing. So we do make sure that we are inclusive, and if residents are unable to attend, as I said, we do record the session and upload it for them to have access to it.
Okay, this answered my question perfectly. Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you, Desmond. I think there's a couple more questions we're going to try and answer quickly so we can run through the application in the chat. So if your project is an existing activity in the centre, but you need some funding to support it, yes, you can apply for funding to support an existing activity or program. You just need to make sure that obviously you meet the criteria. So you meet one of the local priorities and you meet the NSIL funding criteria. So you just have to kind of put that in your application form. Is the presentation going to be shared via email? Yes, we'll share it via email, and we'll also upload it on Newham Co-Create, so you can find the presentation there as well. Susie, was that a leftover hand, or did you have another question?
Just a very quick question. How do you vote? Is it show of hands? Is it online? Do we go to a place where we submit a paper thing? And can you vote for yourself?
So it will be both online and in person. Online will be through Newham Co-Create, and in person we are still kind of working out how we're going to do the voting events. So we're still designing that process at the moment. So we'll come back to everyone about exactly how that's going to work, and we'll answer your second question as part of that as well.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. So I think we're going to run through the application form now, and then if there's any more questions and we have some time, then we'll answer them afterwards.
Yeah, can I just mention that the Newham Co-Create is the main go-to portal to find everything that you need, and that's the main place as well that you will be kind of people will go to look at your projects as well. So that you know it's in your best interest to get familiar with that particular platform. So do go on it. I think the link was put in the chat for Newham Co-Create. Just go in there, click on People Power Places, and just have a look through the different neighbourhood tiles and the timeline, and just get familiar with that, and that will give you a good sort of step in the right direction for your projects to get going.
Okay, right. Just make sure. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Okay, so I will be going through the resident application form with you. This is available on Newham Co-Create in a paper format as well as a digital PDF format. You can request a paper format, a print application format at your local libraries. Okay, so we've gone through the majority of this. So our priorities, our solutions, the project applications and shortlisting, and also voting. And step 5, meaning the project delivery and valuation. We'll just scroll down just to this area. As we said, the deadline is the 3rd of September. Sorry, it's the Sunday, the 3rd of September, I believe. And if you require any support, you can attend the clinics as you are tonight. The next one will be the 20th of July, how to cost your project. And yes, it will be recorded and uploaded onto Newham Co-Create. And how to do a consultation, sorry, on Monday, the 24th of July, if your project should need it. Also, get in contact with your local community neighbourhoods, and they'll be able to speak with you and offer project clinics to support you also. So the priorities, we've gone through it, and each neighbourhood had chose what their priorities are. This will be able for you to view in the application. So the first stage will be about, so please kindly write in block capital so we are able to see your name clearly, your postcode and your email, as well as your contact number. If you require any special communication requirements, please tick the box and notify us what they are, so we can obviously make sure that we are communicating with you in a way that's more suitable for you. Please also, if you have a conflict of interest, for example, being a member of People Powered Places working group, or from any community neighbourhood, or even being a council employee, please let us know. Or even if there is anything else you think that we should know for us to discuss this with you. Sorry. If you are part of an unconstituted resident group also, please let us know and list all the members of your resident group. If you need any more clarification for that, get in touch with your community neighbourhood senior officer. Do any members of your resident group have a conflict of interest? Again, if you are affiliated with any members of the People Powered Places working group from any community neighbourhood, or being a Newham council employee. Does your group have an agreed terms of reference? This will be good for you to share this with us, so we will associate that with your application. Also, does your group have its own treasurer's bankers account, as we spoke about before, to do with Compost London? If you do, then please notify us, and if you don't, then your project will be going through Compost London, which will have a 2.5 fee deducted from the total amount of your grant for the service. Is there another accredited organisation that you would prefer to act as a banker for that project? So if you would not like to go through Compost London, then you can nominate an accredited organisation to act on your behalf. So project description, we would like as much details in regarding this. So which community neighbourhood are you applying for funding from? And you cannot apply for 2 different neighbourhoods. You will only be allowed to apply from 1. So name of the proposed project. This can be what you intend to call the project. However, we understand that sometimes people would like to change the title, but just notify us. So the project summary, this is where we are requiring you to detail as much as possible the purpose of the project and why you are applying for funding. It does say maximum 300 words, but we are willing to listen to a bit more if you cannot fit it within the space. So the project location, this is really important because we would like to know where you plan to deliver your project, and we would like you to be as precise as possible. And if you happen to be delivering your project in multiple locations, please list them. So if you're applying for your project to be delivered in Canning Town, for instance, we would like to know exactly where in Canning Town this project will be delivered. Do you know who owns the land or premises? This is important in regards to permissions. So if you do not have access or have permission, you will need to gain this from the landowner, and this will be part of your permissions that's stated in your grant agreement should you be successful. Will you need permission to deliver your project or parts of your project? Again, this will be like, for instance, if you need to run your event in a park, this requires you to work with the parks team and make sure that you have submitted all the necessary documents or asked for permissions. And if you have to do a consultation carried out to make sure that your project is supported by the people directly impacted by your project, we do ask that you do deliver a consultation, and we will be having a project clinic to show you how to do one. And this is important if your project does affect local residents or leaseholders as well. So your project impact. So we would like you to describe how your project will benefit the community neighbourhood. For example, provide more access to green space, make people feel safer walking home, etc. So really think about how your project will impact the local residents and the benefits of this project as discussed. As stated underneath, who will be your main project beneficiaries. So this will be important for you to look at who will benefit from your project, not just during the stages of your project, but even afterwards, the impact of the project. So how many people do you hope will participate or be impacted by your project? This can be just a round off a number, but we do hope that you will be looking into how many people that your project can reach to and how to get people involved in your project as well. So think about how your project will benefit the residents, but how you yourself will market your project and make sure that people of the area do know that your project is happening. So the essential criteria. So this will be the local priorities. Please describe how your project helps to address at least one of the local, 3 local priorities from the community neighbourhood you're applying for. Refer to the local priorities on page 6 of this document. So when you are looking at the priorities, you will be addressing how your project will be making sure that it addresses it, and it will cover either one or all 3 priorities. So the Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy, also known as NCIL, please explain how your project will help your local area grow and develop to make it a better place to live. If you need any assistance with this, please contact your community neighbourhood senior officer who will be able to go through the NCIL with you. Also continuing, please explain how your project improves our community facilities, public spaces and infrastructure as set out in the infrastructure list, or contribute towards our priorities to improve health and wellbeing for residents as described in the corporate plan. If you need access to the corporate plan, please speak to us and we'll be able to provide you with a copy of that. So your budget, this is really important because we would like to know how you are costing your project. So please list all the costs associated with this project. Make sure you include any costs related to maintenance. And if your project involves installing public infrastructure, please refer to the catalogue of costs. The catalogue of costs was put in the chat, but we do have copies of it, and it is able, I mean, we are able to send it to you if you request it. So when you're looking at the costs, obviously sometimes you may not be able to straight away think of all the things that may come into delivering your project, but as community neighbourhood senior officers, if you require any assistance, we'll be able to sit down and go through your application. And this is why we're asking for you to please try and put your applications in as quickly as possible, and that gives us enough time for us to assist you with feedback. Maintenance costs. Sometimes projects do require the maintenance of it, like for instance, if you have a community garden, looking at how you will maintain that garden, will that incur a cost? So these are things to consider. So the total amount requested. So really stop and think about how much your project actually requires. You may look at it and think, okay, my project only requires £4,000, but if you include the maintenance costs or any other costs that come into it, it may total up to a bit more. So this will be a chance for you to really look at the costs that will incur for the project. And like I said, speak with your senior officer to support you with going through your application, so they can help you to look at any other possible impacts that may come towards your project. So are you looking for additional funding from any other sources? Please list this as discussed earlier. If you have a project that is coming up to £20,000, but you require an additional £5,000 to help the project completely finish, we are asking for you to note if you have any additional funding from any other sources, so we are aware of them. So value for money, please confirm that your budget makes the most of the available funding to deliver the impact described in your project description. So we asking for you to really look at your budget and make sure that all of that budget is put towards the delivery of your project to really make a very big impact in the area that you are choosing to deliver your project. So project delivery, who will be delivering your project? So please indicate if you will be involving volunteers or additional residents from people power places that can participate in the delivery. It's important for us to know how you're planning on delivering your project and who will be involved in it. If you require any other assistance, we can support you with that too. And also third-party involvement. Describe any proposed third-party involvement in the delivery of the project and the measures that will be taken to ensure delivery timescales and cost control is managed, such as inflation of material costs over the next 2 years. So, for example, if your project requires certain materials, will the project materials go up? So we will have to look at that. And if a third party is going to deliver the project, you need to provide a formal statement from them that they agree to deliver the project if it receives funding, and provide evidence of this as an appendix to your application. So the timeline, so fill in the table below with your expected timeline of delivery. As we said, that this is an expected timeline. It is okay if you are not delivering directly on that timeline, but we do ask that your project is delivered between January 2024 to January 2025. So you'll be asked to give an approximate date when you expect to achieve this date, and how much of your budget do you expect to have spent. This will be an approximate, so please don't be fearful if you are not delivering directly on that time. As we know, sometimes projects do have extenuating circumstances where they cannot meet a specific deadline, but we are here to support you. As long as you speak with your community neighbourhood team, share with us your developments, then we will be able to assist you and move forward with your project delivery. So maintenance, how will you ensure that your project is successfully maintained? So we ask for you to look at ways that your project can be maintained, and if there's any issues, as it said beneath, any risk factors, this is something for you to think about and something for you to also discuss with your community neighbourhood team. So are there any risks that could affect the successful delivery of your project within the budget and timescale proposed? If so, how do you plan to mitigate the risk? Sorry. How do you plan to mitigate the risk? So this is forward thinking, and we can assist you with that if you brought forward your project, and we can look at what could be potential risk and how we can mitigate the risks. So project evaluation, so the impact measures. Please give a brief outline of how you will show the benefit of your projects. For example, this could be the targets and the number of residents you want to engage, or number of visits. You may also decide to do a before and after survey with local residents. So we would like you to look at how you think your project will benefit the residents, and do an evaluation of it. We understand that sometimes numbers do change, but how are you planning on making sure that your project gets the most benefit from residents involved? So submitting your application, please ensure that you upload a brief project description, maximum of 200 words, onto the Newham Co-Create platform. So we ask that you submit both a project idea and your application. If you just submit your project idea, then your project will not go forward, because we require this application to be submitted. So we would like you to submit it by the 2nd of September. The deadline is the 3rd, but we would like you to submit it by then. This brief description will be available for other residents to see and comment on, to facilitate wider discussion and bring awareness to your project application in advance of the voting stage. So this is a great way for everyone to come across your project on Newham Co-Create, and for them to see what it is that you would like to do. You can update them via your project idea on Newham Co-Create, and build a conversation with them and get them involved as much as possible. And then there is the declaration for you to sign, print your position, if you happen to be like a trustee, if you happen to be the project lead, and date it. And all of this information at the end will be held in council records for the remainder of People Powered Places cycle. So that will just letting you know where your information will be stored. There is more information down here regarding the conditions of the grant. You're free to read that in your own time. It will provide you with really important things, like if you will need like public liability insurance, if your project requires you to have a DBS, if your project requires you to have permission. So all of these things are noted here under conditions of the grant. This is important here too, your community neighbourhood teams. It lists every community neighbourhood team that's involved with the funding programme of People Power Places. So if you require to speak to anyone in general, you will have both the contact number and the email address here. And that is the end of the application form. Okay,
Thank you, Samantha. That was really well. Did that really well. I think that was quite comprehensive on how you described that. So if Amelie wants to bring up the next slides.
Yeah, we've got about 4 minutes left, but John, if you have a quick question that you want to...
Hi, John. Yeah.
Oh, right. I just wonder what agreed terms of reference means.
You mean at the end of the application form, or...
At the beginning of the presentation that's just gone ahead was something about an agreed terms of reference. I just wonder what that was.
Yeah, so that's if you're so if you're a group of residents, not just one resident, so that's only applies for community groups that don't have an organization. Yeah. So if you are a group of residents, you can have a terms of reference about what your group is. So for example, that describes what your group does and how it works and who gets to decide things, etc. So if you do have one, then just make sure that you tick yes and that you enclose it with your project application, because we'll need to have a look at it.
Right, thanks.
Thanks, John. Okay. Oops.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. we're just going to go on to the next steps now, and the important part, or to let you know that thanks for joining, and you please contact your local neighbourhood team. So at the like Samantha showed you at the end of the application form, the contact details are there for each individual neighbourhood, and you know, do contact them if you're unsure of anything. And I know as well that each neighbourhood also have their own support clinics as well. So if you contact that particular neighbourhood, you can find out when those localized support clinics are happening. So if you've got any questions about the application form, do drop into those support clinics as well. Also, if we can ask you to spread the word as well, tell your neighbours, families and friends that the applications are now open. If they've got great ideas on, you know, projects that could improve your community, we really want to hear from them. We really want to encourage them to apply as well. Like I said, the support is there for everyone to get you through the sort of the application process and all the processes that come after that as well. So we've got great teams in each of the neighbourhoods that can help you along the way. And also we would like you to tell us how this particular session went as well in terms of a support clinic. So we will put the feedback link in the chat, which Samantha has just done right now. So tell us how this particular support clinic has gone for you and whether it was useful for you as well. So on that note, I think the application form links have been sent on the chat many times. So that's the Newham Co-Create link, and that's where you'll find the actual application forms and all the supporting documents that come along with it. So that's your go-to place basically to find out more information and also to download your application forms or print off your application forms, and also pop into your local libraries to neighbourhood centres to pick up actual forms if you don't want to do it online. That's it for me. I think. Emily, Sam, is there anything else?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. It's great to see so many of you want to apply. We really, really are excited about all the project applications that you're gonna put in. So good luck with your application form. Don't forget to give us feedback because that's really important for us to improve the way that we run these support clinics. I know Desmond will be in touch about accessibility, obviously, but if you have anything else to tell us about the support clinic, it'll be really, really helpful. We're kind of like, we'll be running a lot of these clinics up until next year throughout the project delivery as well to support you for those who are successful with their application. So yeah, really important that you give us that feedback as well. But yeah, otherwise, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the evening. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye, Samantha.
Bye.